The only person wey remain for opposition party for the country right now na Daniel Bwala. If you remove Daniel Bwala from PDP now, PDP don finish. No dey reason the daily moment dey be PDP line smell. The one wey dey pay me pass now na my former Delta State governor. Even Atiku sef dey complain. Atiku call me the other day dey lament seriously. I say wetin dey happen? He say our former governor when he pick as vice, he when he pick as vice, no dey pick call again. Now I say now he say yes o. Like this now, if you comot Daniel Bwala for PDP now, PDP is finished. We call the operate one party system. Only APC we call decide wetin dey happen for the country. You understand me now? Na there we find ourselves now. Daniel Bwala now na bone wey dey for APC neck, in hand for their neck. APC don try to vomit Daniel Bwala. No, e no work. Dem even don try to swallow am, drink water, take wash am go their belle, e no work. Daniel Bwala now na national TV na e dey go. If you read there, go dey vibrate like small tiger generator. Me in particular dey beg you, know why? May your voice, may your throat no go burst one day, because the way you dey vibrate for national TV now because of this APC, e come be like say I no understand. But make I dey warn you now, because I dey vex. No be say you go dey address my principal when give me job now, you go dey address am anyhow, because if you continue this life, me and you get issue. You understand? Now this is my principal wey you say na him give me, na him make me the SSC on advisory matter, wey make me I dey fit dey advise you, the heavenly landed, the poor masses, commissioners, ministers, and including my your president and my president. I am the gateway to Mr. President. So if you wan see president now, if you come through me, you go see am. You understand me now? Apart from that, this position wey president give me, so na still make me dey fit dey serve as a man to all the political yahoo boys. You understand me? Because all the political yahoo boys now dey order too much. I want the cash out from them. So since now they plan am, but now as president don empower me now to become as a man to them. I just dey give my 10%. If you like, no subscribe to this channel o. No subscribe. By the time all the cash out for all these political yahoo boys, I go know as I will show you love if you don't subscribe to this channel. All your prayer when you pray since say, oh God, make a national cake reach you. Na through me now I want to reach you. So subscribe to this channel, so that when they show me love, when they cash out from them, I will they show you love. You understand? Your national cake will they reach you through me. You understand? Daniel Bwala now, you know, even get who, you know, they touch lights for the country. The torchlight APC, the torchlight president. If I wicked up finish for him, I don't go talk to make una just observe. Oh, let's see where Daniel Bwala go national TV. They vibrate like small old tiger. I pass my neighbor generator. Those oldie ones, you understand? Oh, let's see where Daniel Bwala they provoke. They lament bitterly. They let us they know say President Bola Tinubu that political yahoo boy they brainwash Nigeria, suffocate the poor.
That wasn't built in a day, so fixing Nigeria is going to take a while. But the president's supporters say he's off to a good start, citing his recent achievements with investors in India, sideline meetings with the world's top leaders at the G20 summit, and the lifting of a visa ban imposed on Nigerians by the UAE, amongst many other things. I mean, surely that's all good news for Nigerians, but you say it's all a big spin. Tell us why you think so.
Well, it would have been a good news if, for example, it is true. Unfortunately, it is not. It is said that we campaign in poetry, but we govern in prose. But it appears that they are still governing in poetry. You see, the 100 days of the administration of President Bola Tinubu has been uneventful, in my opinion. And like I said, I wish him well, but the pledge in Nigeria is, as I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest. We have to be honest, you know, with ourselves and honest to our leaders. And that is patriotic action, so that our leaders will learn from our opinions on the way they are governing us. Now, what they have termed as achievement, quite frankly, can be seen by all as just exaggeration, over-exaggeration of their perception of what they call the achievement. Because in the last 100 years, if you ask a Nigerian, they will tell you that nothing has significantly changed in their lives. And you can look at every fabrics of our society, our lives, sorry. If you look at education, there is nothing that has happened in the education sector. If you look at labor, for example, they are still having back and forth, try to negotiate basic salary and working conditions with ASU and other trade unions. If you look at healthcare, there is nothing that has happened, as a matter of fact. So they have now, because domestically there is nothing to show as a progressive result of what they are doing, they have decided to embark on foreign trips, in other words, diplomacy, to see if they can curry the Pharaoh's favor and accolades. You see, there are two things I want to mention. The first one was the trip to India. And with the greatest respect, what I said can be verified. The trip to India was basically a global picnic. The G20 usually is like a global picnic where G20 members come and deliberate on world issues. But if it is successful, there will be a joint statement stating exactly what they intend to do, what they have agreed on. Because of the absence of China and Russia, they haven't been able to come up with any clear-cut direction on what to do. That's why the joint statement has been criticized by global leaders as watery. But that's even on one side. The president was invited as a member, and African Union celebrated the fact that they have been joined as permanent members. But it doesn't mean anything because the entire African Union has only one vote. So in other words, the rest of the country, two other countries can just wipe out whatever opinion African Union has. But the president of Nigeria left the country 4 days before the event for reasons best known to him, because I'm sure if there are vital and important issues in the country, there would have been no need for him to travel to India. And at the time he arrived in India, the president of India was not even in the country. But let's cut the long story short in that regard. He met with businessmen. He took along with him Nigerian investors or businessmen. And from the report, and only one source will get the report, which is the media aid to the president, is that they secured victory, they secured promises, they secured billions, and they're just exaggerating and mentioning monies that could not be verified either by the investors themselves, either through a joint statement, through their website, or through their personal social media handle. And it's just like when I come to do business with you and you say, I want to do this. But the intriguing fact about the investors is that they saw the domestic investors that were carried along to India. And they will be wondering, because investors are not like people who walk on the street. What they are advised before investing. They would have seen Nigerian businessmen that accompanied the president. And if you look around and study in the past 4 or 5 years, they have encountered their own losses. I remember not long ago, I saw an article by Atedola that he nearly committed suicide because of the losses he incurred. Dangote, and then you find a lot of them. And the Indian investors will be wondering that if you want me to invest in your country, there should be evidence that those who are already investing in the country are succeeding. Unfortunately, the foreign policy objective of this government is misapplied. It is mixed. I don't know the better word to use, but to me, it does not carry any meaning. Because you see, if as a father, you want somebody to marry your daughter and you carry her to a picnic, the evidence of the good things to come is that your daughter should look pretty, should look healthy, should look robust, should look like she has been fed, and then the suitors will be attracted. But when you carry your daughter to a picnic and she look unkept, she look hungry, she look disjointed, deplorable condition and despondent, there is no way you can attract the investors. Short of the long story with India is that everything they said they secured as investment plan or promises could only be established by themselves. There is no one word from any investor in India that they have actually committed to such. Then they took the trip again to Dubai. It is in Dubai that we saw the object of caricature. Because all you need to do is to look at the statement issued by the media aid to the president, and you will tell yourself that this is a national embarrassment. Well, this evening, because we called them out, they are trying to backtrack, and they try to modify. One is that there was a meeting. It was a working visit. And what they agreed on was to discuss further and strengthen ties that will be of mutual benefit. You can see that in the official news agency website of the United Arab Emirates. There was no mention of an agreement for a visa restriction lifting. There was no mention of travel restriction lifting. There was no mention of specific dollars that they are going to put. And to further prove my point, just today, after the United Arab Emirates had agreed with Armenia in similar situation, the United Arab Emirates issued a statement specifically and in a clear terms that they have lifted certain restrictions with respect to travel to the people of Armenia. If such existed in the meeting yesterday, it would have been published in the website. Some international news media felt even embarrassed because the media had blasted the news across all platforms around the world. And they reported, when you check Bloomberg and CNN and all other news outlets, you will see that their source is only one, unverified. Later in the evening, the media aide went to a TV station and tried to walk back by saying that, well, it is not immediate, well, it is, they are going to fine-tune the details. The details which he said they stayed back to fine-tune, after the meeting they started, moving their way.
Right. Well, Daniela, I'm just going to come in there.
That is not the way to govern.
Right. I'm just going to come in there because you've made a lot of very illuminating points there. First of all, let me just take, and I'm not a spokesman for the government, obviously, but they're not here to defend themselves. So I'm just going to take the first thing, one of the things that you talked about, which is Dangote and the other people who accompanied the president as sort of big business people and investors in Nigeria, ostensibly to go abroad and help convince other business people that it's worth investing in Nigeria. I mean, you may have a point in saying that it's not all shipshape and seaworthy, but I mean, Dangote is the richest man in Africa. He's been that consistently, and most of his wealth has come from what he's been doing in Nigeria. So there's an argument to be made for that, as well as some of the other people who run some of the biggest companies that go beyond Nigeria across the rest of Africa. And also on the issue of visas, I mean, everybody reported it, and you're right in saying that the source was always the president's spokesman, that, that's where it came from, and from no one else, including the BBC and all the rest of them. But the fact remains, and I haven't seen the website that you're talking about. You may well have a plausible point there, but the fact remains that those, usually in these circumstances, it is always a first step, and one side in those negotiations tend to be given the chance. I mean, often you see it with the US and some other people. Somebody else is given that opportunity to make the announcement because they want to get publicity, some kind of publicity capital from it. Now, I'm not disputing, I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. I'm simply saying that in the context of international relations, that is the way things tend to happen. But let me turn to another point that you mentioned in your very interesting tweet earlier, which is the picture of Mr. Tinubu that they released, that you said was about meeting Mr. Biden. But according to you, beyond that handshake that we saw, there was no sideline meeting. Would you care to sort of enlighten us more?
Right, I will do that, but permit me to clear one point that you mentioned. You see, when there is a meeting of two countries or two counterparts, once the resolution is done, usually there is a joint statement. In the event there is no joint statement and there is going to be individual statement, there will be corroborative statement. It means the government of Nigeria will be able to address the press there about what they agreed on, and then the government of the United Arab Emirates will confirm either directly or separately. But as it stands today, it is only Nigeria's version. There is no word from the United Arab Emirates that corroborated that point, other than the fact that they have agreed to deepen ties to look at issues that's of common interest. You're asking them to come and invest in Nigeria when they can't even recoup the one they've invested through their airline. That's one. With respect to, it applies to India. With respect to the businessmen, I talk about fact-based information. Over the last 8 years of APC administration, you can check it, or anybody listening tonight can check. Dangote has lost not less than $5 billion. And you can run that through all the businessmen in Nigeria. Well, they will try to say pandemic, whatever, they will give excuse. But Nigerian investors, domestic investors, even with all the leverages they get in terms of tax holidays, still they have not been able to break the jinx because our local laws, the private sector has not been given the thriving environment. And so what it means is that the president should stay and develop the house, and then investors will find it attractive. With respect to the meeting in India, U.S. Biden cannot, when it is not pre-arranged, that
it looks like we're having a bit of a connection problem. Stay with us, of course, because I'm presuming that the internet connection is going to right itself in a moment. Daniel Bwala there talking about that ostensible meeting between President Biden and President Tinubu. And Daniel, you're back online, so please continue from where you left off.
Right. So I'm saying that I will give you an instance of the point I'm trying to buttress. You have Rishi Sunak was in India. He was billed to meet Prime Minister Modi, but because that day was arranged for Modi to meet with Joe Biden, even though he made effort to meet the man, he could not. He had to meet him the next day. That's diplomatic protocol. And as far as we know, there was no plan for President Biden to meet with President Bwala Tinubu at the G20. So when they met, they shook hands. It was just the shaking of hands after they visited one of the Hindu sites or whatever. So there was no site. The point I'm trying to make is that the media machine of the president is projecting itself as awful and even worse than the previous administration. Because in the previous administration, they will give the information as it were, but they are not forceful in making the argument. In this one, they are forceful in the communication of misinformation, forceful in their misleading of the Nigerian people. And you often hear them say, we try as much as possible to be honest with Nigeria. It's not a big deal to meet this president. But don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Don't make it seem like photo ops and shaking of hands will amount to foreign investments as they are trying to project. By next week, when the president of Nigeria will meet President Biden based on protocol, that is when you can talk about sidelines. In fact, I told myself, if the G20 meeting and the Dubai, they try to make a whole caricature of our territorial integrity, by next week when they will meet with a lot of presidents, either in hallway, in escalators, in sidelines, in meetings like that, I am only imagining what they will be projecting. They will probably say the entire United Nations have planned to come and invest in Nigeria. All I'm trying to say in essence is that you can only develop and make your country attractive when you focus on your domestic policies, on national security interests and national interests of the country. Now, it is contained in your manifesto. You have abandoned that and you're on a foreign trip to use photo ops as evidence of either legitimacy or evidence of prosperity. That cannot work. Mark what I'm saying, and I'll be happy to come back to your studio. In the next 1 year, you will see nothing from Dubai as per investment. You will see nothing from India as per investment, because they are just photo ops and statements. There are no specificity, there are no deliverables, and there are no timelines. So this is the point we're trying to say. Focus on insecurity in the country. Okay, look at the National Security Advisor. He's like an elder brother or uncle to me. National Security Advisor is in every meeting of this government, political meeting, meetings that have nothing to do with national security.
Well, now, you make some really good points. Right. You make some very interesting points, Daniel. I suppose time will tell. We'll have to wait and see whether all the investment pledges that they talked about, because I mean, obviously when it's a pledge, it means that somebody pledges to invest in your country contingent on certain other things that if you do them, we will then invest. I mean, but we'll have to wait and see. But listening to you talk, I mean, you're obviously, as always, a very articulate person. I'm wondering if the leaders of the PDP should perhaps now stop in their tracks and turn their public service focus away from all the legal protests to the role of the official opposition, which is what you're doing, which is to question and scrutinize the work of the government, sort of like what you're doing, as I said in the program today. I mean, would that be the best way to be a safeguard against the excesses of empowered Nigerian politicians?
Oh, yeah, first of all, as far as the legal framework of the country is concerned, until there is a final determination of the subject of election petition by the Supreme Court, there is nothing you can do to stop the PDP, for example, from challenging that. But that does not mean that because we are in court, we cannot engage the ruling government and provide alternatives. We don't hate them, but that's how democracy works. All of us cannot come and be saying, boy, so ye. Our duty to Nigerians, like I told you about the pledge, is to interrogate the government. Unfortunately, the signs I'm seeing as this government is taking up is going to be worse than the previous administration unless there is a retracing of the step and change of strategy. You must leave propaganda and then work with realities. That's one. Number two, the governing party, they are using every conceivable strategy under the heaven to use certain individuals in PDP, and with the hope that they will weaken PDP and probably turn the country into a one-party state. If you have seen, over the last few months, they have instigated and orchestrated the suspension of national chairmen of almost every political party. In fact, recently they even got to sack, can you imagine, the presidential candidate of NNPP. And unfortunately, we have in our party an individual who believes he's God. And he is romancing with them and presenting himself as a worthy candidate that can be used to destroy PDP so they can have a one-party state. Unfortunately, when PDP was being formed, he was nowhere near the ideology of the party. So PDP will survive, PDP will thrive, and PDP will remodel this country in no distant time. We need a country that works. We want a country that works. We don't want to build a country on propaganda and rhetorics. There are fundamental things confronting us as a country. They have been domesticated into the various manifestos during the campaign. They've thrown away the manifesto. We need you to begin to implement the manifesto so we can interrogate you and say, okay, this is, for example, when they remove fuel subsidy, we told them we all agreed that subsidy will be removed, but in our own plan, we said it should be in phases and that you will do it in such a manner that the impact on the masses will not be much. In their own case, it was just one statement like that. They removed it. How much is $1 to a naira? How much is pound to a naira? Do you know any parent that paid the school fees of their children in all foreign schools this year, they paid twice the value, not occasioned by the foreign schools, but by the by the incoherent policies of the government. So if, for example, the pound sterling was 21,000 pounds, as at the time that student registered last year, because last year the forex policy is that students can access the pounds at a certain amount, which is about 500 and something. Now the person is required to pay over 220%, just that kind of policy that can throw people into derision. What do we talk about? Investors? Look at what when they gave out the 5 billion to states and they say it's palliative. They just turned the country into internally displaced, places, like refugee camp. Have you seen the footage of how these palliatives have been delivered? The dignity of the human person has been thrown. We are not even talking about whether it is actually delivered to the people and how many of them. So, some would your manifesto so we can challenge you on that.
Right. Well,
but it seems now it is just as the spirit leads.
Right. I mean, I'm not in any way, as I said, holding forth for the APC, but some would question whether the PDP was any difference during its years in office. But what I'd like to ask you, though, Daniel, is, I mean, you talked about the fact that a leading member of the PDP is now essentially in bed with the APC on a ministerial level. I mean, I wonder what the mood is inside the PDP today. I understand you're marking 25 years. I mean, you've got one of your leading members, Nyesom Wike, now openly working for the APC government, and I imagine that the ruling by the Presidential Election Tribunal must have recreated that sort of vast sense of loss and effusive despair that the PDP first experienced when INEC announced the winner of the election earlier this year.
No, the judgment of the court has even created more questions than answers. For example, after the judgment, now the natives of the FCT are planning to approach the court. Since the court of law, the election petition court, said Abuja is just like every other state, the natives now say, okay, we want to approach the court and get an order of court mandating federal government to let us have our governor and 3 senators without prejudice to other peculiarities that is associated with state. And they are now saying they are even going to seek for an order restraining the FCT minister from parading himself as FCT minister pending the determination of the suit. There are so many other areas that this judgment has created. So now you need virtually on every part of the Constitution, you need to go to court to get interpretation, because it seems we're getting into a new legal order in that regard. Now, but the person, if he feels emboldened, for example, by that judgment, one fact I have to make clear is that the party has survived a lot of hurdles, and the party will survive him. And very soon, he's going to be expelled from the party because he has violated the provisions of the party's constitution that will warrant his expulsion. It's just that the party is taking its time and taking it gently. Recently, he even got the audacity to say he wants to suspend the presidential candidate of the party. When Atiku Abubakar with the founding fathers sat and they were forming this party, where was he? He was working in National Union Road Transport or something in Port Harcourt under Azubike Meremi. And then you want to now challenge somebody who is like one of the bastions of democracy in the country. The living politicians today in Nigeria that can beat their chest with living credentials are people like Atiku. Then you can talk about President Tinubu, people who work for democracy. This young man came into government in 1998, became a beneficiary. Everything he has, everything he acquired, and everything he is, it is the party. He owes the party gratitude and not this kind of attitude that he is given. To him, Benjamin Franklin is everything. Or to him, he has the power. Now he's FCT minister. He can exercise this power against the party. One fact is clear. Even the president of Nigeria cannot destroy PDP. Not to talk of a civilian who is in FCT minister thinking in his mind that he's going to destroy the party so we can have a one-party state. No, Tinubu does not support that. And let me tell you this. If Atiku picks his phone and calls President Tinubu and demand that Wike be sacked, Wike will be sacked before they will finish talking on the phone. That is the extent to which President Tinubu values and respects Atiku. So what he is doing in the FCT and all this melodramatic and emotional exegesis, he's only dancing before he will be fired in the FCT. And he will not in any way affect the party. I give that word and you can look at it. Most of the people, you see, there is this thing called blackmail. And he has done that in the past. Anybody who goes against him, he will call for a world press conference and he will say, I gave him this, I made him this, I gave him this. There are lots of them he chased out of the party. I remember he once boasted that Dave Umahi, when he left, that look at him, am I not the one that got judgment for him? He let him interpret to Nigeria what he meant by I got judgment for him.
Yeah, let me come in there because we're fast running out of time. Let me come in there and I need to ask you a couple of other things. I mean, just listening to you talk, and as very passionate as always, and you know, this being a kind of internecine tiff within the PDP that's being played out in public, it just gives the impression that the opposition is frankly looking a bit frayed at the edges. But you also talked about the fact that you're clearly going to the Supreme Court. I mean, you're a lawyer, Daniel, and a lawyer of some repute. What is the most important weapon that you would say the PDP have in their armory going to the Supreme Court?
Well, I don't want to preempt what the legal team will do at the Supreme Court. I deliberately refuse to offer my opinion on the judgment of the court to many television stations within the country and outside of the country the day the judgment was delivered. It is deliberate because I want to read the judgment myself in detail and appreciate the reasoning of the court so I can offer my opinion. And I have to say that the judgment of court is binding on all authorities in the Federation. But the bindingness of the judgment of the court does not take away the constitutional right of Nigerians to give their opinion as to whether they agree with the judgment or not. I happen to disagree with the reasoning of their lordships. And I will only tell you one tonight, which is Section 134 sub 2, the requirement of 25% within the FCT. And in every ramification, you can look at that. If you say that FCT is just like any other state, that means just like does not mean it is. That's number one. But let's even push it further to say you meant it is like all the other states. What are the characteristics and the peculiarities of a state within the framework of our constitution? A state has an elective executive officer called the governor. FCT does not have. A state has National Assembly people as required by constitution, 3 senators, and then the House of Rep as determined by the delineation population and all of that. FCT does not have the same proportion, even though FCT is even larger than Bayelsa. And then 3, the Constitution of Nigeria in section 299 says it is the President and National Assembly that administer the FCT. A state is not administered by the President and National Assembly. We can go on and on and on to suggest to you that FCT constitutionally was designed to have specific and special role so that whoever will become president must have popularity in the seat of power. But the court thought otherwise. But we have judgment of the Supreme Court in the past that made clear as regarding the requirement. So it is good that it will be tested at the Supreme Court, because the court that delivered the judgment right now is not the final court. And so judgment is not a final judgment until it is determined by the final court.
You don't see Daniel Bwala, the way they provoke the follow Presido. You understand? Make I tell you, be very, very careful. You know that this country, that London you did. From London now, if you say maybe you just talk anything, the Wike where you talk to, so come Abuja now. Come Abuja, come talk to Wike like that. Without Wike going to give you smack down. Understand? You just in London now, they provoke, they vura, they talk anything when you want to talk. Come meet us on this country. You know, it is now that I've been given an appointment by the president, my scope of duty has been fully spread out. You understand? My responsibilities now will include suffocating the poor. I will be highlighting the means through which this administration will continue to suffocate the poor so that the poor cannot even breathe. You understand? The poor is not entitled to breathe. In this our administration, that is the plan. Anything that will allow the poor to breathe is against us. So be warned. If you want to face us, come from London and come to Abuja. We are all in Abuja waiting for you. When you come, we'll give you smack down. Now, who can I talk to any IB? Now, let me tell you something very important. I have issued a letter to Dele Momodu offering him a right to reply to Governor Wike. You know, say Wike don't let us know, say Dele Momodu, the professional praise singer, say no get electoral value. So I don't send letter give Dele Momodu say make he come explain how and Wike waka. When it be say Wike now they dare to bring the letter when it engage am. So you just go reverse for 8 years when Wike be governor. Not be 8 years, say 2 weeks. You were just in Rivers State praising him because so you touch your hand there, the water your system. But now I don't fall out now, you won't fall in hand. You understand? It no go work for you. Call now, what they call you now, come talk your own part of the matter. You understand? When I call the Momodu, he must prepare, we must hear from him. We must bring the letter of engagement when Wike engage for PRO work when they say go to for River State. We need to investigate this people properly. You understand me now?